Drake and UMG's lawsuit had just updated, and it looks like he had made a whole bunch of requests. The only problem is that the request that he's making is so absurd, and the majority of them are based off of lies and narratives that he had found online. And now Drake is desperate enough to run with the narratives that he created during the battle. Now, moving forward, I'm only going to point out the craziest lies on here, because 30% of what Drake is asking for is information, and the other 70% he's just throwing stuff at the wall and trying to see if it sticks. This is the most ridiculous amount of requests that I ever seen, and the majority of the requests just make it seem like he is desperate to find something that will help him in this case. Now, just going over the things that I want to point out, the first thing that I want to tell y'all about is this situation with Ramon Alvarez Smickle. This is something that I've talked about previously. Before we talk about Kendrick's situation, let's just talk about the people on Drake's witness list, because this was something that I covered a month ago and I predicted was going to happen. You see, in Drake's witness list, the first two people that were added was Kojo Menea Samoa, which Drake is trying to subpoena right now, and Ramon Alvarez Smickle. Now, these are the two people listed at the very beginning of his 63 witnesses. The problem is that now what I predicted previously is happening currently with Drake's request. Ramon Alvarez Smickle was a victim of some type of smear campaign. About a month ago, I had talked about the story where there was an account trying to blame Ramon Alvarez Smickle for invoicing the NFR podcast. And one of the requests that Drake had made, all documents and communications relating to any payments by Ramon Alvarez Smickle, whether directly or indirectly, to the NFR podcast to promote anti-Drake messages and to populate positive comments regarding Kendrick Lamar and the NFR podcast comment section. About a month ago, I had talked about this situation exactly. No NDA Network was a Twitter account that was spreading propaganda on the internet. They were trying to say that they had some information about the case that was going to be shocking, or it was going to shock everybody. And later on, they ended up claiming that they had invoices from Ramon Alvarez Smickle paying NFR podcast. They went on for a whole week before sharing this information, claiming that they had a crazy hit piece that they were about to drop on Twitter, just to find out that it was all just a whole bunch of lies. That No NDA Network account on Twitter had posted this information, this fake invoice, claiming that this was the receipt of Ramon Alvarez Smickle paying NFR podcast 30 grand to promote anti-Drake messages and to populate positive comments regarding Kendrick Lamar. However, people were really quick to stop this man in his tracks with spinning this narrative, because they were able to find out that he was just using an invoice generator on Google to create these claims. Someone had showed him under the comments that they could just do the same invoice that he did, and they could charge it to Drake and ship it to Drake for $1 million. Just an example to show you that he was just faking this invoice to try to make this person on Drake's witness list look guilty. But this was a narrative that Drake's team decided to run in the lawsuit. But this was just a narrative on the internet that we had called out a month ago. But moving forward now, Drake is trying to make a request for propaganda and smear campaigns that were created on Twitter by fake accounts. These accounts are only here to protect Drake, because everybody knows that NFR podcast was catching a lot of heat because the general public was assuming that they were more for Drake than they were for Kendrick. But in this story here, they're trying to flip it the other way around. But the only reason why is because this account was running with that narrative on the internet. It's crazy to think that Drake's lawyers are just running with narratives on the internet. It just shows you how desperate they are. But this is not as low as it goes. It continues to get worse. Drake gets so desperate that he starts to call out his own guilt to try to find some narrative to run with. For the time period of January 1st, 2018 to May 31st, 2018, all documents and communications relating to any instruction, direction, or suggestion that any musical work or music videos by Pusha T, including but not limited to the story of Adidon, be censored or otherwise modified, altered based on the content of the music work or music video, or decision to not license, publish, or promote any musical work or music video by Pusha T, including but not limited to the story of Adidon, on the basis of content of the musical work or music video. But in doing so, Drake is admitting that he had suppressed Pusha T when the story of Adidon came out. Pusha T had openly said in an interview that after the story of Adidon back in 2018, after that, he started to experience suppression. That makes this post from Pusha T hit a lot different after reading that, because remember when he had an issue with that verse with Young Thug, he said, "Hey, Young Thug, a couple of things. Don't feel bad. Nobody knew what that verse was about. The label heads that stopped it didn't even know. They only knew, they only assumed because he told them. The same way he told about the Ross Maybach 6 verse. If he'll tell record executives about rap verses, God only knows what else he'll tell. I don't deal in police work, police rappers, or police blank. So this post from Pusha T really hits different when we're reading the request that Drake is making now regards to him. It's willing to show that Drake is willing to put himself in guilt to try to come up with something that will hit in the court of law. The only part is that he's only making himself look worse by making himself look guilty for admitting that UMG had protected him when it came to Pusha T, but not Kendrick Lamar. It just shows that he's mad that they didn't suppress Kendrick the way that they suppressed Pusha T in favor of Drake. Just admitting more guilt on his part than anything else. And just when you thought that it got low, it gets lower. He gets more desperate. He went completely bonkers right after that, bro. He continues to make the situation worse for himself. But let me just point out the wording between these two things. Drake is trying to mention his criminal history to try to prove that he's an innocent man while trying to make Kendrick look like a guilty party. If you look at 49, it says on January 2009 through the present, all documents and communication relating to Drake's criminal history or lack thereof, including any background investigations, due diligence, inquiry checks, and reports related to criminal records. He only wants facts. He doesn't want any allegations. Notice that there's no allegation. It doesn't say the word allegation here, but when we read document 50, when it comes to Kendrick Lamar, it says from January 1st, 2014 to the present, all documents and communications relating to allegations of domestic violence, violence against women, and or other forms of violence committed by Kendrick Lamar. Now, isn't it funny that when Drake talks about his background, he doesn't want to bring up allegations, but when it comes to Kendrick's background, he wants to look into allegations only. He doesn't want to look at Kendrick's actual criminal record where he hasn't been guilty of any of these crimes, but he's willing to only look into the allegations of these things. However, the only allegations on the internet was already debunked on this channel. Kendrick Lamar was in the same place as P. Diddy. P. Diddy was the one that was in the area where Kendrick was accused of these things. A woman mixed up Kendrick Lamar and P. Diddy, as well as the dates that those two artists had stayed in that location back in 2014. This was around Memorial Day weekend. However, that was during a UFC fight, and P. Diddy was the one there.
It was Memorial Day weekend, and then, well, it was fight weekend and then Memorial Day weekend. I don't remember. I think it was Memorial Day.
I know I was there for a fight on Memorial Day weekend.
Whatever. Anyways, so I get this.
Not whatever. You saw how he looked at the other girl? Look, when she said whatever, look.
Weekend.
Whatever. Anyways, so.
Look, all she knows is that it happened on Memorial Day weekend. She don't even know exactly what day. But if she's talking Memorial Day weekend, thinks there was a fight, this is not the 3rd. This is the 24th, 25th, or 26th that she's talking about.
Allegedly, so I don't get sued.
Yeah, so you don't get sued because she already knew that she was out of pocket when she mentioned the wrong dates. Look.
It was Memorial Day.
I know I was there for a fight on Memorial Day weekend.
Memorial Day weekend, May 24th, UFC 173, May 24th, around Memorial Day weekend. That's the fight that's in question. These are the dates that are in question. Funny is the way that Drake words it. He tries to tell the law to look into his criminal background because he knows it's clean. Why doesn't he ask the judge to look into Kendrick's criminal background? Because he knows it's clean also. So instead of looking at his criminal background for any history of that, they just want to look into allegations. But even if that's the case, all of that is hearsay and none of that could be proven true. A lot of people that are defending it online also admitted that that isn't true. To think that Kendrick really did those things that Drake had claimed. When you saw them together like that, yes.
Like to the domestic abuse and shit?
Yes, of course.
Oh, no, there's no proof for that.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Chad. But Drake doesn't care because he's desperate, and now he's trying to prove what he said in songs to be taken as fact. And this is the can of worms that Drake had created for himself. And it gets worse from here because just when you think it couldn't get any lower, he continues to make it worse in the signs of his desperation. From January 1st, 2019 to the present, all documents and communications relating to David Isaac Freely, also known as Dave Free, and his relationship with Kendrick Lamar Duckworth and Kendrick Lamar Duckworth's children, bro. You cannot be serious. Now you've dragged Kendrick's kids into court. Now, I've never seen someone take a loss so bad that now they have to bring up Kendrick's kids in the situation. The crazy part is that Kendrick had warned him in Euphoria not to bring up family because Drake was the first one to do so when he had brought up push-ups. When he made push-ups, he was the one talking about family. Kendrick was the one to drop Euphoria and warn him not to do that. Drake doubled down with Family Matters, and what did he do? Right after that, he dropped Meet the Grams, and that's when he talked to Adonis. And he talked to him respectfully, too. That's the crazy part. Play this when you're 18. You know what I mean? That's the crazy thing about this. But let me get back to the point, bro. And let me ask you this, because this is the most important thing that I got to tell you. Drake is so desperate, he needs to find something to make this true. Drake is so desperate for something that he's willing to claim what he said in a rap battle that should have been taken as hyperbole. Now he's trying to spin it as facts. Well, this is the problem. And I said this recently. What makes you think that UMG won't do the same to you? We know that these accusations aren't real, but the problem is that what if UMG decides to do the same thing? Now, remember, UMG had said that Kendrick Lamar's verses were all opinionated sport in rap battle, and it was all just used for hyperbole. You're lucky that UMG still has you as an artist, and I feel like UMG has been playing it safe with Drake for this long because he's still an artist under them. And because they still make money off of him, they tried to tell him that Kendrick's lyrics were just hyperbole. They're just opinions. But if Drake is trying to claim that his shit is facts, what makes you think that UMG won't do the same to you with your allegations? Because the discovery goes both ways. If you're trying to prove your lyrics are facts, let's hope that UMG doesn't do the same and try to prove that your allegations are facts. Because if they did, bro, they would probably find more scathing information about you than they will about Kendrick and these two allegations that you had summed up in court. Ain't no way that these requests are going to add up. And now you are steering away from the conversation. Let's not forget that the judge, when they were in court, she had asked Drake's lawyers that Drake did the same thing. The judge had asked Drake's lawyers in court about this very situation. Didn't he say that Kendrick's kids weren't his? But remember what UMG had said to Drake. When they were talking about exchanging discoveries, UMG had told Drake, be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. I think they knew how desperate Drake was. I think they knew that he was going to stoop low to this level to start throwing shit at the wall and hoping that it sticks and try to prove what he said in the songs to be true is only going to bite him in the ass. Because if UMG decides to go as low as Drake and try to prove that what Kendrick said is true, this is going to take an ugly turn for Drake, and I think it's going to get worse for him. He better hope that UMG continues to run with the hyperbole statements of Kendrick Lamar, because if they try to prove what Kendrick Lamar said was true, just like what Drake is doing, it's not going to look good for him. He's going to start to look crazy. I think that they were trying to spare Drake when they were talking about Kendrick's hyperbole. If UMG did exactly what Drake is doing now and try to prove that Kendrick's lyrics were facts, it would make him look worse. Drake is so desperate that he's willing to do anything to try to see if this is true. He is willing to do anything. I'll be real, bro. Drake is lucky that he's still under UMG. They're lucky that they still want to make money off of his music, because if that wasn't the case, they would try to make him look so much more worse than he already looks now. Drake is trying to use narratives on Twitter. I mean, he's even trying to call out Screwface when Screwface has nothing to do with Kendrick Lamar, bro. I mean, maybe he's in support of him, but we know, me and you know, that he has nothing to do with this battle, with the internal issues of this battle. Screwface is just a spectator, but it's just like all the other shit that he sees on Twitter. He just tries to run with narratives that he's finding online. I'm gonna be real, bro. Drake's lawyers are finessing the hell out of him. The PI investigators are finessing him. His lawyers are finessing him. There is no way that $1 million lawyers are able to make these requests, bro, and not to be taken serious in court, bro. I hope the judge really does laugh at Drake and his lawyers. There is no way that all of these lies are going to work in court, bro. Like, he really thinks that asking for Kendrick's contract is going to do anything either. Now, his lawyer said that it was unreadable, it was incomprehensible. But what is the contract going to do at this point, bro? What is looking at Kendrick's contract going to do anything to support what you're doing at this point? It's completely useless. And I think you put yourself in a messed up position trying to prove that your lyrics are facts. Now, I wonder how UMG is going to respond to this. If they stoop low to Drake's level, we might see them try to expose their own artists. All in all, bro, this is the craziest lawsuit. This is the most self-serving lawsuit. Drake is not doing this for the people. He's not doing this for the small artists. He doesn't give a damn about anybody but himself. He is bringing children into this. He was the one that brought up women and children in the first place, and now he's bringing them into court because nobody should bring somebody else's kids into the court of law, bro. All of this is just your desperate attempt of trying to find your gotcha moment, but you're not going to find anything. You're just spiraling out of control. And this is your last desperate attempt to try to find anything. Throw it at the wall and see if it sticks, bro. But y'all tell me how you feel about this and get back to me, man. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video, man. Peace. Keep it a legend.